She dey run her own life, no be anybody shadow. Own house, own money, strong like a sun for morning. Mother send one husband from the village road. Boy come with all manners, and they heart way slow. She look at my two eye, say I no be small girl. If you want stay my side, you go learn my word. Village boy,
Mama, you have 30 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't throw this village man and this foul-smelling calabash out into the street right now.
That man you're calling a village man is your husband. I collected your bride price already, Sonya.
My name is Sonya Okonkwo. This is the story of how I went from being a proud, independent city woman, humiliated by a forced village marriage, to standing beside a man who held the keys to everything I ever dreamed of. I still remember the exact moment my world shifted. I stood in my sleek, tiled living room, holding a bucket of soapy water, staring at a man who had just hung my private undergarments on the estate balcony for every single neighbor to see. If you are loving this story already, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. But let me start from the very beginning. At 26 years old, I had my entire life planned out. I was independent, running my own successful business from home and holding on to a firm belief that love was something you chose carefully. My ideal man had to fit a precise standard. He needed to be tall, polished, cultured, deeply spiritual, wealthy enough to handle my lifestyle without blinking, and undeniably attractive. I believed in equal partnerships built on modern values, refined taste, and absolute mutual respect. I had complete faith that if I waited patiently, the perfect gentleman would step into my life. What I never saw coming was that my own mother had already made that choice for me in the most absurd way possible. I was sitting in my living room with my closest friend, Vanessa, sipping cool drinks and laughing about the ridiculous standards of modern dating. We were talking about what we truly wanted in life, completely oblivious to the fact that my mother was thousands of kilometers away, finalizing a transaction that would completely alter my existence. A sudden, aggressive knock at my front door shattered our conversation. When I opened it, my heart sank. Standing on my doorstep was a young man holding a dusty travel bag and a raw, sloshing container of palm wine. He wore mismatched, oversized clothes that practically screamed rural hardship. Before I could even ask if he was lost, he grinned, exposing his gap teeth, and introduced himself as Tobechukwu. In his heavy, unrefined, thick accent, he boldly announced that my mother had accepted a bride price on my behalf back in the village. According to traditional custom, my mother had bound us together, and he had traveled down to Lagos to move into his matrimonial home. Panic seized my chest instantly. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to dial my mother. When she picked up, her voice was calm, almost cheerful. She told me she had carefully selected a well-behaved, traditional, and deeply obedient husband for me. She brushed off my outrage, claiming that, as my mother, she knew what was best for my future and that it was my duty to take this crude village man and mold him into whatever I wanted him to be. She casually mentioned that he was pure, untainted, and completely devoted to the arrangement. I looked back at Tobechukwu, who was already making himself comfortable on my designer sofa, resting his dusty feet on the table and asking where the matrimonial kitchen was located. I felt a suffocating wave of dread settle over me. I had a deadline of 2 months before my mother planned to visit Lagos to inspect our household and ensure we were living as man and wife. I was trapped in my own home with a man from a completely different century, carrying a secret arrangement that threatened to destroy my dignity, my lifestyle, and every single dream I had ever built for myself. The moment my mother hung up the phone, a heavy silence settled over the living room. Vanessa looked at me with her mouth wide open, unable to utter a single word. Tobechukwu, completely unbothered by the storm brewing around him, picked up his dusty travel bag and set it directly onto my polished mahogany center table. He took a deep breath, looked around my apartment, and declared that the city air smelled artificial, but he was willing to endure it for the sake of our marriage. I spent the rest of that evening in a state of absolute shock. Vanessa tried to comfort me, but there was little anyone could say to soften the impact of what had just happened. My independent lifestyle, built through years of hard work running my digital marketing firm, felt instantly compromised. I had built a reputation among my peers as a self-sufficient woman who knew exactly what she wanted in life. Now, sitting across from me was a man who wore rubber sandals, spoke in broad village proverbs, and didn't know how to operate a microwave. Tobechukwu's background was as distant from mine as night from day. From what my mother had hinted during our frantic phone call, he had spent his entire life working on local farms and handling community affairs in our ancestral village. He was raised with strict traditional values, where a man's word was his bond, and family arrangements were absolute. He genuinely believed that my mother had done us both a favor by bringing us together. To him, this wasn't an imposition, it was a sacred duty that he intended to fulfill with complete dedication. In those initial days, I made every effort to keep my distance while establishing strict boundaries. I gave him the guest room and laid down clear rules about personal space, hygiene, and household conduct. Yet, despite his complete lack of modern polish, Tobechukwu possessed a strange, quiet confidence. He wasn't intimidated by my expensive furnishings or my sharp tone. Whenever I scolded him for putting his bare feet on the furniture or for speaking too loudly, he would simply smile, nod, and promise to learn. The first real crack in our uneasy living arrangement came less than a week after his arrival. I had spent the entire morning preparing for a critical virtual presentation with a major international client. Winning this contract meant financial security for my agency for the next 2 years. I had set up my home office, double-checked my internet connection, and explicitly instructed Tobechukwu to stay in his room and remain quiet for 2 hours. 10 minutes into the presentation, as I was presenting my key business metrics to the board, a loud, erratic noise echoed from the kitchen. Tobechukwu had decided that my quiet meeting was the perfect time to prepare his favorite traditional dish. Not knowing how to use the modern electric stove, he had gathered dry sticks from my manicured garden, carried them into the kitchen, and attempted to start an open flame on my granite countertop to roast dry fish. Thick smoke immediately triggered the fire alarms throughout the apartment. High-pitched blares shattered the professional quietness of my meeting, and water sprinklers began showering down from the ceiling. Panicked, I rushed out of my office to find Tobechukwu trying to extinguish the flames with a damp dish towel, coughing profusely while shouting that the house was under attack by evil spirits. My laptop was drenched, my presentation was abruptly cut off, and my living space was flooded with water and ash. The prospective clients immediately dropped the call, sending a quick email seconds later to inform me that they were terminating negotiations due to lack of professionalism. Standing in the soaked hallway, covered in soot, I stared at Tobechukwu. He looked back at me with genuine remorse in his eyes, holding a charred piece of wood, repeatedly apologizing and explaining that he only wanted to prepare a good meal for his wife so I wouldn't starve while working. But the damage was already done. The illusion of control I had held onto so tightly had completely vanished, leaving me deeply vulnerable and painfully humiliated in my own home. Standing in that waterlogged hallway with my ruined laptop dripping onto the soggy rug, I knew I had reached the point of no return. The financial loss of that international contract was a heavy blow to my agency, but the loss of my dignity felt far worse. Every effort I had made to maintain my poised, independent image in the city had crumbled in less than 15 minutes, all because of an absurd arrangement forced on me from the village. Yet, despite my overwhelming anger, I was trapped. Packing Tobechukwu's bags and throwing him out into the Lagos streets was not an option I could easily execute without starting an all-out war with my mother. In our culture, openly rejecting a suitor whose bride price had been accepted by your family carries immense social fallout. My mother had made it explicitly clear during a brief, heated follow-up call. If I sent Tobechukwu back, she would disown me and ensure every elder in our extended family branded me an ungrateful, rebellious daughter. Left with zero alternatives, I made an irrevocable commitment. If I was forced to live under the same roof with this man until my mother's planned visit, I had to take complete control of him. I could not afford another disaster. I decided right then and there that I would transform Tobechukwu from a clueless village man into someone acceptable enough to stand beside me in public without bringing me shame. The very next morning, I initiated my strict transformation regimen. I sat him down at the dining table with a fresh notebook and outlined the rules of modern living. I taught him how to use the gas burner, how the washing machine functioned, how to answer the doorbell, and how to speak without shouting. To my surprise, Tobechukwu did not argue or resist. His motivation was simple, grounded, and intensely genuine. He believed that as my husband, pleasing me and making my life easier was his primary responsibility. Sonya, he said, looking me straight in the eye with absolute earnestness, I know I am not the city gentleman you wished for. But my heart is clean. Teach me, and I will learn. His complete sincerity only made things more morally confusing for me. It would have been far easier if he were arrogant, lazy, or cruel. Instead, he was fiercely hardworking, rising at dawn every day to clean the house, peel yam, or chop ingredients for cooking. Yet, every single action he took seemed to cause compounding problems. A few days later, the personal stakes expanded to affect my inner social circle. My close friend Vanessa called to invite me to an upscale evening birthday dinner at an exclusive restaurant in Victoria Island. Under normal circumstances, I would go alone or with Vanessa. But my mother called right before I left, warning me that she had eyes around Lagos and expected me to take my husband everywhere I went to build a real bond. Reluctantly, I spent 3 hours grooming Tobechukwu. I bought him a sharp-fitted shirt and dark trousers, shaved his overgrown beard, and strictly instructed him on table manners. No chewing loudly, no eating with hands at a formal restaurant, no unprompted conversations with strangers, and absolutely no bringing up village customs. He looked shockingly handsome, once properly dressed, clean-cut and tall, but behind that polished exterior was still a man who had never seen a menu card in his life. When we arrived at the restaurant, the atmosphere was thick with low jazz music, glowing chandeliers, and high society chatter. Vanessa was already seated at our reserved table, accompanied by 2 of her affluent high-fashion friends who thrived on social status and elite gossip. The evening started smoothly enough, but tension built rapidly under the surface. When the waiter brought out the appetizers, Tobechukwu looked at his small portion of grilled prawns with utter bewilderment. Loud enough for adjacent tables to hear, he leaned over and asked the waiter if this was merely a sample or if the real food was still in the kitchen, complaining that a full-grown man could not survive on decorations. Vanessa's friends exchanged quiet, amused smirks. I felt my cheeks burn with heat. I tried to kick him gently under the table to signal him to stop, but Tobechukwu misread my distress entirely. Thinking I was uncomfortable because the food was inadequate, he stood up in the middle of the crowded luxury restaurant, raised his voice, and offered to go into the kitchen himself to show the chef how to cook proper portions for his wife. The entire dining room fell dead silent. Every head turned in our direction. Vanessa buried her face in her hands. Her friends pulled out their phones to hide their laughter, and I sat frozen in my seat, entirely stripped of my pride. The catastrophe was complete. My private domestic nightmare had officially become a public spectacle. The ride home from the restaurant was spent in heavy, suffocating silence. I kept my eyes fixed on the blur of the Lagos streetlights, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. Tobechukwu sat beside me, unusually quiet, shifting uncomfortably in his fitted trousers. He knew he had disgraced me, but in his mind, he had simply been defending his household's dignity against small portions and snobby waiters. "Sonya," he spoke softly as I pulled into the estate driveway, his voice stripped of its usual booming confidence. "I only wanted to make sure you were fed properly. In the village, a man who lets his wife eat bird food in public is no man at all." "This isn't the village, Tobechukwu," I snapped, turning off the engine and turning to face him in the dark car. "In the city, we don't cause scenes. We don't shout at waiters. You ruined my reputation tonight, in front of my closest friends." He looked down at his hands, those thick, calloused hands that had worked hard soil all his life. "I am sorry," he whispered quietly. "I will do better." That night, multiple threads of pressure began tightening around me. My agency was still bleeding money from the lost international deal, and I desperately needed new clients. To make matters worse, Vanessa called me late that evening. Her tone wasn't spiteful, but it carried a stinging truth. "Sonya, your mother really set you up," Vanessa sighed over the phone. "My friends are already talking. They think you married a wild man for money or family pressure. If you're going to keep him around, you need to fix this fast, or your social and professional image is completely gone." I was trapped physically and emotionally. I couldn't throw him out without my mother disowning me, and I couldn't take him out without risking total embarrassment. Every challenge was becoming deeply personal. Over the next 2 weeks, a strange dynamic began to form in the house. I doubled down on his training, teaching him how to dress, how to eat with cutlery, how to use modern appliances, and how to carry himself with quiet composure. And, to my surprise, Tobechukwu proved to be an remarkably fast learner when he was determined. He traded his oversized clothes for modern casual wear, trimmed his hair neatly, and practiced his English daily by reading my business books out loud. Yet, just as an apparent resolution seemed to appear, layers of deception began to stack up around us. It started with small things, unexplained phone calls. Tobechukwu would step out onto the balcony late at night, speaking in hushed, urgent tones in our native dialect. Whenever I walked near, he would abruptly end the call and slip his phone into his pocket with a tight, reassuring smile. Then came the financial oddities. One afternoon, while setting up a new banking app on his phone to help him manage his allowance, a notification popped up on his screen. It was an alert from an international private wealth management account. The balance displayed, even for a brief second before he snatched the phone away, was staggering, far beyond what any humble village farmer could ever dream of having. My head spun. I started questioning reality. Was my mother in on this? Was Tobechukwu truly a poor village suitor, or was he playing a completely different game? "Who were you talking to on the balcony?" I asked him point blank that evening as we prepared dinner together. Tobechukwu paused, his hands still on the cutting board. He looked at me, his eyes guarded for the first time since he had arrived. "Just family matters back home, Sonya. Nothing for you to worry your mind about." "Family matters?" I pressed, stepping closer. "Tobechukwu, you live in my house. You were sent here to be my husband. If there are secrets, I have a right to know. Some secrets are kept to protect the people we love until the time is right," he replied calmly, setting down the knife. "Trust me, Sonya, I am here for you." His words sounded sincere, but the dread in my stomach only mounted. I was giving up my peace, my time, and my pride to mold a man who was hiding something massive right beneath my roof. The The tension in the house was reaching a boiling point, built on a foundation of unspoken truths and escalating deception, driving us directly toward a collision I never saw coming. The quiet suspicion in my mind quickly grew into a constant state of anxiety. Every time Tobechukwu smiled, every time he offered to help around the house, I wondered who he really was behind that warm expression. The mystery surrounding him felt like a weight pressing down on my chest every single day. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Tobechukwu had stepped out to buy groceries at the local market, leaving his laptop sitting closed on the dining table. Ordinarily, I respected personal privacy, but the financial alert I had seen on his phone weeks prior nagged at my conscience. I needed answers. I approached the table with a pounding heart and opened the screen. The device was unlocked, sitting on an email inbox. As my eyes skimmed the unread messages, my breath caught in my throat. There were official document attachments from international stock exchanges, private equity firms, and corporate legal teams. The name on the account wasn't just a humble village suitor. It belonged to Santoi Tobechukwu Okoye, the majority shareholder of a multinational investment firm with operations across West Africa and Europe. Before I could digest the shock, my eyes landed on an email thread titled Direct Agreement, Mrs. Okonkwo. It was a chain of detailed communications between my mother and Tobechukwu dating back nearly 6 months. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the messages. The truth revealed itself in cold, black and white text. Tobechukwu had met my mother through a high-profile community development project his foundation sponsored in our village. After hearing her complain about how modern city life made young women cynical and focused only on status, Tobechukwu had agreed to a bizarre, calculated experiment. He wanted a woman who would accept him for his character, not his massive net worth. My mother, desperate to settle me down with a wealthy and respectable man, had orchestrated the entire village suitor charade. They had lied to me from the very beginning. Every embarrassing moment, every forced lesson, every tear of frustration I had shed over his loud behavior and unrefined act was part of a staged test. I wasn't a partner being introduced to a prospective husband. I was an unwitting participant in a rich man's psychological game. Just as the final piece of the reality shattered around me, the front door unlocked. Tobechukwu walked into the foyer, carrying bags of fresh produce, his face lighting up with his usual bright smile when he saw me standing in the dining room. "Sonya," he said warmly, setting the bags down on the kitchen counter. "I found the exact fresh herbs you like for the dinner sauce." I stood frozen beside his open laptop, staring at him. The warm, rustic husband I had spent weeks trying to mold suddenly felt like a complete stranger, a master actor who had spent every evening laughing at my naivety behind my back. "Is this who you really are?" My voice shook, barely above a whisper, as I pointed a trembling finger at the glowing screen. Tobechukwu's smile instantly vanished. He looked at the open laptop, then back at me, his eyes widening as he realized what I had discovered. He took a step toward me, reaching out his hand, but I immediately stepped back, putting distance between us. "Sonya, please let me explain," he urged, his voice dropping its heavy village accent entirely, replacing it with the flawless, refined tone of an educated global corporate executive. "It wasn't meant to hurt you. I swear to you, it wasn't a malicious lie." Hearing his true voice for the first time felt like a sharp slap across my face. The village dialect was gone. The simple farmer persona had evaporated into thin air. "You lied to me," I choked out, tears of absolute humiliation spilling over my cheeks. "My mother sold me out for your sick little trial. You brought dirt into my home, destroyed my work, made me look like a fool in front of my friends, all so you could test whether I was worthy of your money." "No, that is not what this was," he pleaded, taking another step forward, his hands raised in surrender. Your mother wanted us to meet, but I refused to be courted for my wealth. I wanted to see if someone could care for the man beneath the polished suit. And Sonya, every single thing you did for me, every effort you put in to teach me, proved how deeply good and genuine you are. Don't touch me, I screamed, pulling away as he tried to reach for my hand. You treated my dignity like an entertainment show. Both of you played me for a complete fool. My entire world felt completely destroyed. The foundation of trust was gone, leaving me feeling utterly humiliated, stripped of all control, and deeply heartbroken by the people I was supposed to trust most. The confrontation in my living room left me feeling entirely hollow. Within 24 hours, the fragile order I had tried to build in my life completely collapsed. I ordered Tobechukwu to pack his belongings and leave my apartment immediately. He tried to speak, to offer explanations, to hand me documents proving his intentions were honorable, but I refused to listen. Every word coming out of his mouth now felt like another layer of deceit. He eventually picked up his bag and walked out, leaving the front door open behind him. Once he was gone, the quietness in my home felt oppressive. I picked up my phone and called my mother, my voice shaking with raw anger. I confronted her about the email chain, about selling my dignity to a wealthy man, and about treating her own daughter like a character in a game. Instead of apologizing, my mother doubled down. She told me I was being ungrateful, stubborn, and foolish. She said that a woman in her late 20s should be thankful for a wealthy, established man who was willing to commit to her. When I told her I would never speak to him again, she delivered a devastating ultimatum. If I ruined this relationship and brought shame on our family by chasing away a man who had already paid traditional respects to our lineage, she would cut ties with me completely and tell our entire extended family that I was a disgraced daughter. The isolation hit me immediately. I was terrified, angry, and utterly alone. I turned to Vanessa for support, needing a friend to vent to, but when I explained the situation, her reaction only added to my devastation. Vanessa didn't see the horror of the deception. Instead, she laughed off my pain, telling me I was crazy for kicking out a hidden billionaire. She told me that if I didn't want Santoy Tobechukwu, she would gladly take him herself, asking why I was making a fuss over a harmless secret when he had all the wealth anyone could ever dream of. That conversation stripped away my last support system. I realized that even my best friend viewed my worth through the lens of money and social status, rather than human respect. To make matters worse, my business hit complete rock bottom. The loss of the international deal due to the fire incident earlier had triggered a chain reaction. Bills were mounting, my office rent was due, and 2 major clients pulled their retainers, citing doubts about my focus and professionalism. My bank account balance dwindled to almost nothing. I spent days alone in my dark apartment, skipping meals, staring at the floor, overwhelmed by a severe mental breakdown. Everything I had built on my own, my business, my pride, my self-reliance, was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't go back to my mother, I couldn't trust my best friend, and I felt sickened by the thought of reaching out to Tobechukwu. Every option in front of me felt terrible. I could swallow my pride, apologize to a man who had lied to me, and accept a life built on a lie for the sake of financial security. Or I could stay true to my dignity, face total financial ruin, lose my home, and be disowned by my family. I was completely broken, staring into an uncertain future with no clear way forward. For 3 straight days, I barely left my bed. The heavy curtains remained drawn, blocking out the bright Lagos sunlight. My apartment was deathly quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional ring of my phone, which I ignored. I was drowning in despair, completely overwhelmed by the choices before me. Then, on the 4th morning, a firm knock sounded at my door. It wasn't the aggressive banging from weeks ago, but a steady, respectful knock. When I finally opened the door, it wasn't Tobechukwu, nor was it my mother. Standing there was Auntie Kikelomo, my father's older sister. She was a woman who had always lived quietly on her own terms, running a successful chain of bakeries across the state after my uncle passed away years ago. She took one look at my sunken eyes, my unwashed hair, and the messy living room, then walked right past me, dropping her handbag on the table. "Pack a bag, Sonya," she said calmly, turning around to face me. "You are coming to my house for a few days." I broke down right there in the hallway. I cried until my chest ached, pouring out every detail of the nightmare, my mother's secret deal, the village suitor disguise, the deception, Vanessa's betrayal, and my failing agency. Auntie Kikelomo listened silently, brewing a warm cup of herbal tea and handing it to me. She didn't judge me, nor did she scold me. "Sonya," she said softly when I had finished, "your mother believes that a woman's worth is measured by the man she stands beside. But you have always built your own table. You are angry because someone tried to trick you into sitting at theirs." "I have nothing left, Auntie," I whispered, staring down at my hands. "My business is falling apart. My mother wants to disown me. I feel completely powerless." "You are not powerless," she replied firmly, lifting my chin so I had to look her in the eye. "A man's money does not erase his dishonesty, but your pride will not pay your bills either. You have a choice to make. You can stay in this dark room, play the victim, and let your mother and Tobechukwu write the rest of your life. Or you can stand up, rebuild your business with your real skills, and force everyone to address you on your own terms." Her words sparked a tiny, fierce flame inside my chest. Over the next week at her house, Auntie Kikelomo helped me clear my head. She offered me a temporary business loan, not as charity, but as an investment in my agency to help cover my immediate overhead and secure new software. With a revived sense of determination, I spent endless nights reworking my agency's strategy, reaching out to local corporate clients, and pitching fresh, authentic marketing campaigns. My work began to yield results, and within weeks, I brought on 2 new accounts on my own merit. Yet, the core dilemma remained. One evening, Tobechukwu sent a package to Auntie Kikelomo's house. Inside was a handwritten letter and a thick folder of legal documents. In the letter, he expressed deep remorse for participating in the deception. He admitted that while the test was born out of his own past fear of being used for his wealth, he had realized halfway through that I was unlike anyone he had ever met. The legal documents were even more shocking. He had transferred 40% of his company's regional tech marketing contract directly to my agency, signed and stamped, with no strings attached. It was a multi-million naira deal that would elevate my business into the top tier of the industry overnight. I sat at the dining table with the documents on one side and my self-respect on the other. The choice was clear and terrifying. I could reject the contract, refuse his help completely, and continue building my business slowly from scratch to prove a point. Or I could accept the contract as restitution for the harm he caused, face him directly in a professional environment, and demand that he see me as an absolute equal, not a woman to be tested, but a partner to be respected. I looked at my reflection in the window glass. The naive girl who had been crying on her living room floor was gone. I picked up my pen, signed the documents, and made my decision. I was going to face him on my own terms. The annual West African Business Leadership Gala in Victoria Island was the most anticipated corporate gathering of the year. The grand ballroom was packed with industry executives, media houses, and high society figures. Everyone who mattered was in attendance. Among them was my mother, sitting at a reserved front table alongside Vanessa, both expecting Santoi Tobechukwu Okoye to make a grand solo appearance as the keynote speaker. They had no idea that I was attending. They assumed I was still at home, broken and nursing my wound. When the master of ceremonies announced the arrival of the keynote speaker, The heavy double doors opened. Santoi Tobechukwu Okoye walked down the central aisle, looking stunning in a bespoke tailored suit, carrying the commanding presence of an international executive. But he wasn't walking alone. I walked right beside him. I wore an exquisite, elegant, deep emerald dress, my head held high, radiating absolute confidence. The entire room buzzed with whispers. My mother's jaw dropped in utter disbelief. Vanessa froze in her seat, staring at us with wide eyes as we passed her table without giving her a single glance. Tobechukwu took the stage under bright spotlights. He delivered a powerful address on corporate integrity, authentic leadership, and the true cost of hidden agendas in business and personal partnerships. True partnership, Tobechukwu spoke into the microphone, his polished voice echoing through the silent hall, cannot exist where honesty is treated as optional. I learned this lesson the hard way when I attempted to test the integrity of a woman I deeply respect. He turned his gaze toward me, standing near the side of the stage. I entered a situation under false pretenses, Tobechukwu continued publicly, in front of hundreds of high-profile guests and streaming cameras. I pretended to be a simple man from the village, using a foolish test to measure her character, but in doing so, I disgraced my own character. Sonya Okonkwo showed grace, incredible patience, and unwavering strength even when I presented her with chaos. She built her success on her own talent, and today, her agency stands as our primary strategic partner, not because of my wealth, but because of her unquestionable capability. A quiet gasp rippled through the audience. My mother looked visibly stunned, realizing that her secret arrangement had been exposed on a public stage, and that her daughter was now standing as an equal to one of the most powerful men in the room. Tobechukwu stepped down from the podium and walked directly to where I stood. Before the entire room, he bowed his head slightly in genuine humility. "Sonya," he said, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics, "I stand here in front of everyone, not as a master of games, but as a man asking for your forgiveness. You proved your worth 10 times over. I am the one who had to grow." The room erupted into applause. In that single moment, every rumor, every insult, and every humiliating moment I had endured was completely wiped away. Justice was served publicly. My worth was recognized, my business was elevated, and the truth stood unchallenged for everyone to see. The applause inside the grand ballroom was deafening, but the noise that mattered most was the quiet stillness that settled inside my heart. For the first time in months, I felt completely light, as if a heavy chain had finally broken off my shoulders. In the weeks that followed that public revelation, the truth continued to set everything right. My mother called me a few days after the gala. Her tone entirely changed. The pride and control she had held over me for years had dissolved into quiet respect. She apologized sincerely for orchestrating the arrangement behind my back, admitting that she had allowed her fear for my future to override my right to choose. We spent hours talking, setting healthy boundaries, and rebuilding our relationship on mutual respect rather than pressure. Vanessa tried to reach out to me multiple times with long messages and apologies, but I kept my distance. I wished her well, but I knew that moving forward into this new chapter of my life meant surrounding myself only with people who valued my worth when I had nothing, not just when I was standing beside power and wealth. My digital marketing agency flourished beyond anything I had originally envisioned. With the major tech contract secured and executed with flawless precision, my firm gained a reputation for unmatched excellence across the region. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving on my own terms, employing young talent and building a legacy I could truly be proud of. As for Tobechukwu, he kept his promise. He didn't rush me or expect instant forgiveness. He spent months courting me properly. No disguises, no secrets, no games. He showed up as the man he truly was, deeply intelligent, humble, exceptionally kind, and fiercely protective of my happiness. I learned that beneath the corporate executive and beneath the rustic persona he had put on, there was a man who truly loved God, loved family, and cared for people with a rare, genuine heart. 16 months after that chaotic day, he walked onto my doorstep, carrying a dusty travel bag and palm wine. We stood together on a sunlit beach in Lagos, surrounded by true friends and family, making real vows of our own choice. Looking back now, I can only smile at how far we have come. What started as my mother's frustrating village plot turned out to be the very storm that stripped away my fears, revealed my true strength, and brought me a love deeper than anything I could have ever asked for. Thank you so much for going on this incredible emotional journey with me today, my wonderful family.
Mother send one husband from the village road. Boy come with all manners, and they heart way slow. She look at my two eye, say I no be small girl.